Welcome to another episode of Otherworldly Encounters with Mike and Brian. Brian, last week we hit a milestone.
Yeah.
20 episodes.
Yeah.
And to some that might be a small feat. But for us,
Feels monumental.
it does actually.
Yeah.
So I thought that this episode, you actually had a really good idea on this. Let's recap the last 20 episodes. We'll talk about our favorite ones, the ones we didn't like, our feelings, and all that jazz. What's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I've got a few things written down that we can talk about that should be pretty fun. It's funny getting here, remembering back to when we initially started, because how do we even come up? Like, forget about the actual podcast, but how did the topic even come up the first time? Do you remember?
Yeah, we were actually sitting here drinking garage beer,
Yeah.
which is our weapons of choice tonight. That was a great segue.
It really is.
So we're going to crack open our garage beers, because when you're going to talk about where we got started and how it's everything, we got to go back to our roots, and garage beer was it. And the way we got started, man, we were sitting here vibing in the garage, man. We were listening to tunes, playing some guitar, and I saw your poster or your drawing over on your wall of Bob Lazar spacecraft, and I just struck up the conversation like, hey man, what is this? And that's getting into like that in-depth conversation with you. I was like, you know what? If you remember right, what'd I say?
We should do a podcast on that. And I probably had too many beers, and I was like, yeah, that sounds good.
Yeah, and I ordered all the shit that night. While we're sitting here drinking beers, I ordered all. Once you said, yeah, man, I'm in, I just like.
And that doesn't feel like that long ago, but it's been a while. It's been about 6 months. And that original setup that we got, like we went through multiple iterations at this point of our podcast setup. And I think from listening to like the first episode, sound quality and just kind of how we were prepared to do things, it's like, wow, I feel like we've come a ways.
Yeah, but let's go back even further. And because this is one thing I don't think our listeners will have, because we've never brought it up. But when our podcast stuff arrived, what did we do? We literally sat in your garage at this table, headphones, microphone, and we just sat here and had normal conversations for like a month straight before we ever recorded our first episode.
Well, we were watching YouTube videos to figure out how to even use all the shit
that was
we
true.
had, because neither of us knew what the hell we were doing.
But that's true. But we sat here for a month and never recorded. Like sometimes we recorded stuff and I'd go back and listen to it, just get a laugh. God, I really wish I would have saved some of that stuff. But we just wanted to get comfortable.
Yeah.
Because we had never done this before. I mean, this was just a drunken idea.
Yeah.
Which I'm sure a lot of our listeners have had a lot of drunken ideas, right?
We've all been there.
Yeah. So, but that's really where it started. And, where we're at now, it was just, now I look forward to our Sundays or whenever we record during the week and just to come over and talk about shit that I never, ever thought I would ever talk about.
And here's what's made it cool. And this is like an interesting, just piece that goes with the territory, I guess. But like the number of people that we've interacted with that you would never expect to have had a conversation with, or people that but you don't really know what they're into. And then you strike up a conversation and one thing leads to the next. And all of a sudden we have a podcast episode talking about a personal experience or something else. Like, I think it just goes to say like how far ranging this topic is. And like we tell everyone when we're on the show, we're just two dudes drinking beer in a garage talking about stuff that we think is interesting, whether it's real, fake, in between, or just a fun story. Like regardless, it's just fun to have a beer and talk about it.
Yeah. And like we discussed before this, we started recording, like 10 years ago, I would have never approached any of these subjects.
Yeah.
Because I had zero interest in it, right? But what really got me into it was your passion behind, Bob Lazar and the unexplained. Right. And that I don't know, it just like tripped something into me where I was like, okay, well maybe I need to be more open and more open-minded.
Yeah.
Put it that way.
Well, and you're probably like a lot of people out there, and I think hopefully that's kind of what draws our viewers in. Listen, we still wouldn't be here if we didn't have cool interactions with our viewers. So thank you very much for getting in contact with us and telling us your thoughts. It's made this whole thing a lot more entertaining.
Oh yeah, it really has. And I honestly, when we had the discussion, we're like, we really don't care if anybody watches it or listens to it. Like, we're just having fun doing it. But now I do care. Like, I want to we want to put out a good product, and so people who enjoy these topics that we're talking about just keep coming back and wanting to hear what we have to say and what we're talking about.
And we always said we would only do it if it was fun. Once it started becoming too much like a job, then it doesn't become fun, and it's not something you look forward to. And I still look forward to doing it. So, that's what makes this enjoyable, and just a good passion for good conversation and the unknown.
Yeah. But to your point, we've had some incredible people on this podcast. We've been fortunate. Yeah. To whether it's people we knew, to your point, that we had no idea that they were into certain things, and they agreed to be on, putting themselves out there in front of the world. I mean, it's like, I just feel very blessed to have those people in our life, but also for those people to, go out on that limb and that leap of faith with us, right? New podcasters or vloggers or whatever you want to call us, to be on our show. And let us just ask them questions.
Listen, it's hard to put your personal opinion out there. It's hard to not go with the flow, because once you start going against the grain, it's just an uphill battle, right?
It really is.
But that's what makes life worth living, is like what interests you, and find it and stick with it.
Yeah. Find your passion, and, F everybody else, do what you want to do, and
So, Mike, I wrote down some questions, since we're doing a 6-month recap, 20 episodes. I it's funny. I went through all my notes that I have over all 20 of them. And even though it's only been 6 months, we've had so many conversations, so many hours worth of conversations with different people. It's funny how you kind of forget about certain things. And that's what makes doing this recap kind of entertaining, is sitting down and talking about some of the different episodes that we've done. But like, I guess for me, what's your favorite episode that we've done?
Man, see, that's tough, because I mean, I've my favorite episodes can vary just based off topic, right? I would say the most impactful episode was definitely the Gregory. The most like fun topics was with Paul and with Adam, right? Like, we're talking about Bigfoot, we're talking about alien stuff, and Paul's knowledge and Adam's knowledge of cryptids and everything else. It was just fascinating, right? But I guess one of my favorite episodes was with Justin and Holly. And the reason for that is we've both known them for years, but neither one of us had any idea of what they were into, right? Yeah. And, Mesoteric, and then Wicked, and, like, it was just, I was just very humbled that episode that they were willing to come on and put themselves out there for the world to see on things that that again, we've known them for 2 years, man. We never known any of that stuff.
Yeah.
So that was my favorite episode.
Okay. That's fair. I think same thing, like, and I've got some different things I wanted to talk about too, to your point about like most impactful and some of those things. But I think for me, my favorite episode's probably been the episode with Judd.
Yeah, I forgot about that. Damn.
That intersection of kind of UFO stuff and spirituality, and then kind of talked about psychedelic drugs a little bit.
Yeah, that was awesome.
It was super interesting conversation.
And you're right. I mean, the episode with Judd was a great episode, and I really think our viewers and listeners really enjoyed that. And I definitely want to have Judd back on. And it would be really cool if Judd and Gregory could be on at the same time, if that's something we could work out, or they would agree to.
Yeah.
But no, I mean, yeah, you're right. That's absolutely, it was absolutely a great episode. I really enjoyed that one.
So the other thing, again, just thinking of like fun stuff to talk about. And this is a hard one because you can go a lot of different directions, but what would you say? And again, you're coming into this not knowing anything about any of this. This was just a conversation started about UFOs in my garage, basically. But like, what do you think for you has been the most interesting topic we've covered?
I would like to say the dolphin sex, but we haven't really got into that yet. So maybe in the future, Paul, if you're listening, we would need to set that one up. I think the most interesting would go back to Graves, Fravor, and Grush. When you got the congressional testimony, you've got the Tic Tac, you've got the other one. So you got East Coast, West Coast, you got, and obviously, like, I always knew that the government's covering shit up. I mean, that just goes without saying. But I just found that probably the most fascinating, just because there was a lot of actual, with our government's technology, getting that stuff on tape. You have professional pilots has thousands of flight hours, and just putting themselves out there. Just this is what we saw. We can't explain it. I think that would probably be the episode. Those 3 episodes that I would.
For most interesting, especially for you, because you hadn't really come into any of this. And
No.
as we've talked about a million times, that 2017 New York Times article really covered those guys' testimonies.
But also, the other reason I find that interesting, though, is because I think their claims can cover. Let me take that back. How do I want to put this? Basically, like, if you think of Bob Lazar, right? His claims from the 80s, 90s, whenever those first came out, like, it substantiates them, like, it makes them relevant, So I think that's why I think those 3, and I think those 3 episodes that we did there may have started. That's where I think my mind, or the way I was thinking, might have started changing a little bit.
Travis Walton, did it do it for you?
See, this is where I get torn between Travis Walton, because because we talk about the why behind the what, right? Like, why is somebody doing this or saying this?
Yeah.
Is it a money grab? Is it,
right.
Do they have ulterior motives, basically, is what we're talking about.
Right.
And I hate to sit here and bash a guy if the story is legit. Like, if it absolutely happened and there was some major evidence came out and actually proved that, I'd feel like a complete asshole that I've been bashing him for the last 6 months, right? So that's where I'm torn with it. Are
you saying you think that's plausible now?
I don't even know. That's the thing. I don't want to say it's even plausible, because I still think
just feel bad.
Bullshit. I just feel bad for the guy.
It makes sense, because we've talked about it, with coming on this show and kind of expressing your personal beliefs, you're putting yourself out there. So, that is a hard thing, to put yourself out there and have people reject you. That said, if that was the case for him, then why did you, sign up, to tell your story and make Fire in the Sky the movie? And again, like, to your point about ulterior motives, like, yes, very brave of you to come forward with your story. And, well, I have a little less respect for you because now you're earning money. And maybe respect isn't the right word, but I guess you're just capitalizing on coming out. But had that went the other way, then I guess I would just feel bad for you.
But then I got to look at myself, like, think about myself, right? So if I had a UFO experience, or you had a UFO experience, and it was just, like, very impactful, obviously, you can say you were abducted, whatever, wouldn't you want to make some money off that too?
Yeah, dude, I just paid my landscaping bill. Like, we just redid the front of our house, and like getting that bill, I was like, fuck, maybe I need to be abducted so I can capitalize on it.
Yeah. So that's the other part of the flip of the coin too, right? So I can see, but my whole thing is I just don't want people making shit up. Right. And especially we've talked about this before with the advances in AI and being able to, generate videos and
we
whatever.
were just looking before we started at AI videos, and you're like, do you think this is fake? And I'm like, 100% that's fake. But it's hard to tell. You don't really know.
Yeah, you don't. And so that's where that's where I hope this doesn't lead, right? Where we're sitting here, we may have, like, to Travis Walton, it may or may not have happened type scenario. But that was back in the time when you didn't have those types of advanced technology that we have, right? To where we're watching stuff and we're like, man, this could be legit, but maybe it's not legit, because now we've got AI and you know what I mean? Like I just don't know how I'm gonna feel about once we get to that point, which we're kind of already there though.
Yeah. Circling back to my questions, because I got one in mind for this one. Funniest moment for you?
Funniest moment.
I'll go first while you think about it. The episode we did with Mitch on the cryptos and the story about, because I'm still, and now I already forget, and I was just going to make fun of me forgetting, and I literally forget as I'm talking about it. But what I thought was the centipede leg sweeping the person turned out to be, what the hell was it?
It's a fucking cockroach. And I told you that
That's
for
right.
weeks that it was a cockroach.
Right. And Mitch had given me shit. He's like, dude, that wasn't right. And I finally listened to it. And then we were laughing about it on the next episode.
Yeah.
Like,
well,
that was pretty entertaining.
No, it was definitely entertaining. It was frustrating because you wouldn't believe me. Like,
Yeah.
it doesn't make any sense, man. It's a centipede. I'm like, and then Mitchie brought up the point. He's like, well, how can you leg sweep fucking
That's why I didn't think it made any sense and thought it was hilarious, because you couldn't.
No, that one was good. It was funny. I don't know, man. Like, I really think some of our funniest moments, my funniest moments were with Paul. Dude.
The
Paul,
dolphin hand jobs.
yeah. You know, Paul's a character. I fucking love the guy. He's great. I mean, he's just so knowledgeable.
Yeah.
And he's funny as fuck.
Yeah.
He is a funny dude. And just some of the, like the very first opening, right? When he was like, I'm rooting for the motherfucking dolphins, right? Because we opened up with maybe talking about dolphin sex or whatever, right?
Yeah.
I mean, he's just a class. I like him.
Yeah.
And so I think some of my funniest moments was definitely with Paul.
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah, we had some good, dude, just from a guest standpoint, you know, shout out to everybody we've had on this podcast. And I actually had to sit down because, again, 20 episodes is a lot. Like, I know all these, but Adam, Tyler, Mitch, Sean, my friend.
Oh, hold on. Fuck you, Tyler.
Sean, my friend. Sean, your friend, the pilot. Paul, Gregory, Doug Waller, Judd, Justin, and Holly.
Did you get Mitch in there? Yeah, you got Mitch. Yeah. Just
Like,
a lot of people.
A lot of different people coming on to talk about a lot of like who knows what each week. We have we literally really don't know, because it's not like we have like a schedule coming out of like, here's what we want to hit when. It's usually just like what's coming up either in our social media feeds or something that we talked about with somebody, and it's like, oh yeah, we should look into it. And it's usually not that week. We plan a few weeks out for different things, but
yeah. And the crazy thing is most of those were on before we even started videoing.
yeah.
You know, and that's so they've only got a glimpse, like they've got to listen, you know, if they listen to our, you know, on Spotify or iHeartRadio or whatever.
Talking about the tech evolution, right? We had the first podcast setup, then we upgraded to this podcast setup.
Yeah.
Then we added videos. Then we've got like lighting to light things up correctly, and it's really stepped up the game.
Yeah, we really have. And, you know, I think that's the good thing about us is neither one of us are like stagnant type guys. Like if we see a spot where we think that we need to enhance it, then we just make the move and do it. You know what I mean? We don't sit around and powwow and be like, well, I don't know. Maybe we're just like, fuck it. It's only money. Let's just throw it towards it.
Throw it out.
Roll the dice. See what happens.
How about this one? Favorite beer. We've had 20 episodes and not 20 different beers, because I know personally I've repeated several times. But favorite beer that you've had to date on an episode?
See, that's a toughie, man, because I really enjoyed a majority of all of our beers that we had. From like a nostalgic standpoint, garage beer, because that was the very first beer that we drank on our very first episode when we talked about Bob Lazar with the shitty sound quality. But again, we talked about it, and you busted my balls a little bit about it because I'm a porter and a stout guy, especially comes this winter. So I would say probably the last few weeks when we had some of those darker beers.
I really liked, and I probably should have looked this up before I said this, but I think it was Rheingeist Moose Tracks that you brought. Is that right?
Maybe.
That was delicious. But I'm kind of, I'm just a basic dude. And that's like the whole premise of this podcast. I'm just a basic guy. I sit in this garage. Sometimes I'll do woodworking projects. Maybe I'll work on my car. If not, if I want to relax, I'm going to play guitar. Bush Light, Natty Light, garage beer. Like, I typically don't really go fancy. Now, if I go out to a brewery, it's an IPA or something else. But like typically when I'm in here, I'm drinking a garage beer. So this is a very typical, like it just makes me feel, it's comfort food, but in beer form.
No, I agree with that. I mean, if when I'm in my garage or you come over wherever, like there's Coors Light, there might be Busch Light. There's nothing. There's not like hardcore IPAs or stouts or porters in there. It's just a light beer. Like my buddy, like Adam always said, light is right. It's like one of those things that you can just. It's a table beer for the most part. You can just sit there and just pound away.
How about this question? How many beers do you think we've had while doing the podcasts?
Ooh, is this counting the like pre-podcast, like when our planning phase?
We'll call it subjective, however you want to define it.
Oh boy, at least 5 cases. Because when we were setting this up, we went through some beers.
Oh, you mean before we even started podcasting?
Well, technically, we had the headphones on. We were just practicing, so I'm counting those. And we went through some beers.
Yeah, I was going to guess like probably 3 beers an episode. So like 60. So that'd be 2. But if you're talking before we even did podcasts, it took a lot.
So I was 1 case more than you.
Well, you said 5, didn't you?
I thought I said 3. Did I say 5?
I don't know. I thought it was a centipede too.
We've already drank too much.
I don't know.
Okay, 3 cases. Maybe if I said 5 before, that is a little high, but yeah, 3 cases sounds about right. Maybe 4.
Okay.
I still think it's on the higher side though, because man, we pounded some beers.
How about this one? Because we've covered such a diverse array of topics. If you give a percentage between these 4, how much time have you spent thinking about each? And it's got to add up to 100. UFOs, cryptids, paranormal, and spiritual.
Boy.
Which kind of are like the 4 segments of things, I think generally, that we've covered.
So I'm going to say for the spiritual side of it, and I'm going to add Gregory in on that mix and Judd, and then we do have a future guest that is going to be absolutely amazing that fits into that realm. Just because talking with them and Gregory and I text, at least once a week, it seems like anymore. I'm going to say probably 50% of my time when it comes to getting like per our podcast for that.
Okay.
And I'm horrible.
So that gives you UFOs, cryptids, and paranormal.
Yeah. Now paranormal, I'm going to say.
And cryptids kind of fits in that. I really didn't know how to differentiate. Call it, well, I would say spirits, but that kind of ventures into spiritual then. I don't know.
So I'm going to give that 30%. And the reason for that is because I'm more of a paranormal guy. Like that's where when we first started talking, you were into the UFO, the extraterrestrial. I was into the paranormal stuff, which I do believe in that, right? So I'm going to say that's probably 30% and then 20% for the rest of stuff.
UFOs and cryptids.
Yeah.
Okay.
However, I will admit, like when I go out at night and let my dog out, like I'm constantly looking up, waiting to see orbs or, like Chris Bledsoe or the UFO.
Well, and you did have one thing that Justin corroborated, right?
Yeah, and actually, well, that's 3 people. Remember, 3 is a coincidence. Isn't a coincidence after that because Paul saw that light. Now his was a few years before mine.
2018.
Yeah, which is still several years before me. But then I saw the light, but then Justin saw that same light that same night. So, but it was, but the thing reason I added Paul in there is because it's similar. It was pretty much identical to what I saw.
Interesting.
Because he said it was a bright light and he was like squinting and he's like, thought something was blowing up and then it just faded out.
Yeah. Huh. Fair.
Yeah. So.
Well, I still think about UFOs more than anything else. Just they have my algorithm on Twitter, right? It's just constantly right in my face. So and I love it. It's fascinating. So I'm all in. So I'm a 40% UFOs, 10 cryptids and paranormal, and I throw the rest at spiritual because Judd and Gregory, and I mean, they just really made you like stop and think.
Yeah. The episode with Judd, which I think Gregory's episode came in right after that. I think the timing of those, I wish we would have said, we were like, oh yeah, we planned that out perfect. But most of our episodes that sometimes are just kind of like, hey, what do we want to talk about tomorrow? And then next thing you know, we got something.
But like Gregory, we had to plan out.
Yeah, Gregory was definitely planned out. Judd was planned out as well, just because, you know, he has his own parish or whatever, and you know, you got to factor that all in there. But yeah, Judd's was just. It was interesting to hear, like, his thoughts and how open he was to the possibility that there are aliens or other life forms.
So I was looking to see how close they were together. So Judd was episode 10 and Gregory was 14.
Yeah.
They were 4 apart.
Yeah. But I mean, it was just kind of cool how they aligned, right? But like, going back to Judd, I just thought it was just fascinating, his take, right? He was open to the idea, or, you know, he even said, like, you know, how could you not think that there was other life forms when you have God, right? If God was the creator of all.
Yeah. Well, just getting in the conversation, to your point, like, what is the Holy Spirit? And, you know, do you physically interpret that into the form of a ghost, or is it more of a, you know, a theological idea around, you know, there's this omnipresent being?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So it was just an amazing conversation.
And I think I threw him a real curveball when I was like, I read this book about psychedelics and people going on a religious journey.
Right. You know, well,
talking to Judd after the podcast, he was like, he kind of threw me a curveball there. And I was like, I can't help it. It's at the top of my mind.
Yeah, but I mean, he answered it honestly, right? He didn't punt it.
It made for great conversation.
Absolutely.
What this is all about.
Absolutely. He didn't kick the can down the road. Like, he answered it honestly, you know, and I respect that. And because, you know, some people, you know, in different positions, because again, he's clergy, right? He's
right.
part of a church, and
right.
You know, there could be a chance that some of his people that go there listen to this, right? So he's, you know, I understand there's a fine line, you know, where you want to walk, but
from a viewer conversation standpoint, like I had some of the most interesting conversations, and I could tell, you know, from a reach standpoint that audience, that episode really touched a lot of people because everyone has whatever their belief system, whatever that is. But then to cross that over into what we're talking about really presented some, I don't know, kind of almost like precarious questions. Like the one that we asked Judd, you know, if it came out that aliens and UFOs are real, how does that impact the spiritual community? Right? A fascinating question. If Jesus is the son of the only God and there's somebody that's older than that shows up, then how does that affect our belief system? And it was just it's not a question that you would normally think about, but if you want to believe in aliens and UFOs and how old they may or may not be based on what the Bible tells us, like, it's an interesting conversation to have. Maybe not one that comes up very often, but like for 2 dudes drinking beer in a garage, it's a pretty good, you know.
Yeah, I mean, if you want to go down like the spiritual route, you know, let's talk about Heaven's Gate.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, that
pretty wild. That was pretty wild.
It's definitely wild, and it just amazes me where, you know, like you have people out there that just prey on people when they're at their lowest point, right? Or they're searching for something, whether that's love, friendship, family, whatever, right? And they bring them, like they specifically seek these people out, and they bring them into their ideology, you know, what they believe in, and get them to believe in it. And then the end of it is what just is like, man, because remember, if you remember correctly, I asked that question when they all decided to, what was it? They drank or took a pill and whatever, right? Whatever they did, however they decided to commit suicide. Were they really doing that because they thought there was the mothership, or were they doing that because they thought that was the only way out of that cult? Because they're just in so deep, and there's that thought potentially of harming them or maybe their family if they got out. So that's why I raised that question, because that's a deep question. You know, you kind of, that you're never going to answer. There's not going to be an answer to that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't know. And it's been interesting talking about like when we got into, you know, Skinwalker Ranch and talking a little bit about Robert Bigelow and like, you know, even extrapolating that out to when we talked about Area 51 too. Like those are things that everyone knows about, but it's not until you take time to actually research it that you're like, holy shit, like I had no idea how big Area 51 was.
I guess, hold on a second before you go there. I guess that might be one of my favorite moments too, is when we were talking about Skinwalker Ranch and you're talking about an episode, there was like this liquefied fucking soil. You're like, I'm a goddamn geologist and I could tell you what that is.
It was
right?
wet silt. And they're like, oh, what's this jelly? Well, you just fucking pounded the shit out of the ground and you turned the wet silt to jelly. Like,
I guess that was probably what
I really like that show too, and I want it to be great. But it's like, if you're going to do soil science, maybe have a soil scientist out there.
Brian's available.
I would totally not do that, but I would go.
You wouldn't do that?
No.
You wouldn't go out there and test their soil?
Here's the thing. Here's the TV magic. Those guys were probably on site in like 110 degrees for like 4 days. Mm-hmm. Fuck that.
So you want to sit in this cold ass
Give
garage?
me the 30-second review of what it looked like, and I'll tell you my thoughts. And not have to spend 4 days in the 100+ degree heat
and still make bank doing it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I mean, you know, pros and cons, I guess.
Right. Yep.
All right, what else we got going on here?
Best golf score of the year.
Ooh, best golf score, I believe, was in 80 or 81. Mine was 80 or 81.
Yeah. I don't think I got below 88 this year.
What was your worst golf score?
Ooh.
On it, we'll go. You want to go 9 or do you want to do 18? Let's do 18.
Man. I'm trying to think if I shot over triple digits this year. I'm sure.
My score is
Actually,
digits.
I know. I'm positive because on the guys' golf trip, like after day one, your game's really. Day one is before all you get into, you know, your beer drinking, you're eating really shitty, you're staying up late. Like day one, I'm still good, but by day two, I just have totally deteriorated. And day three, I'm just ready to go home. So, yeah, you know what? I'm gonna say 112. I don't know if that's factual, but that's probably about right.
I was going to go with 110, and I know it was probably between 110 and 112. I mean, I had some like shitty rounds.
Yeah.
And then it was like, it's like this bell curve, right? Like it was shitty, and then I hit my peak. It was like 80. I was doing great, and all of a sudden, like I shot like a, an 80, like an 85, whatever. I was trending well. Like I was like, man, I finally figured this shit out. And all of a sudden, it was just train wreck.
That's why we're not professional golfers.
Yeah, I mean, I went out with did a charity outing a couple weeks ago, right? And my bosses flew in from out of state, and God, fucking dribbling them off the goddamn tee box, and
the worst.
It was the worst. Mike, I still love you.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was just, yeah, man. Golf is a very frustrating game.
Right.
So how are you feeling? So we talked about a lot of different stuff tonight. Like, who was your favorite guest?
My favorite guest?
Yeah.
Well, like I said, I really liked Judd. I don't know. I enjoyed all the guests.
Yeah, it's hard to put it like in a sequential order, right? Like who's the best?
Like it was fun to talk to my friend Sean and hear about his personal experience because one, I hadn't talked to him in a while, and two, I'd never heard that story. So for me, like that's pretty entertaining. But then you have like an impactful conversation with Gregory. I'd count that up there. Yeah. Or a really funny conversation with Mitch, just going through all these old cryptid tales, or like I don't know. I don't really know that I have a favorite on that front. I've really enjoyed it all. And I've really enjoyed, it's been fun after we post the episodes to see like either people that have written in or people that have commented and just like interacting with people. And some people have made suggestions of stuff that I'm like, I don't even know what the hell this is. Like I'm going to have to Google it.
Yeah. And I think with all the episodes that we've done, the one that I would like to redo or maybe recap is Bob Lazar. And the reason I say that is, for one, like with all the stuff that we've talked about over the last 20 episodes, it just strengthens what he said back, in when was that, in the late mid-90s?
Well, yeah, from 89. And we talked about it with like Fravor and Graves too, because those were the incidents where the video corroborated Bob Lazar's story.
But I think the other thing too is just our audio was so shitty back then.
it is funny to go and listen to that. Like that setup versus what we have now is like
because
totally different.
That very first episode was in my garage, right, or in my barn, and we had what we thought was quality,
and it was decent. It's just once we hear this versus what we started with, it's like, man, that is wildly different.
Yeah, it's definitely wildly different. We got different mics, right? We didn't know the difference between dynamic and whatever. Like, had no idea. The microphone was a microphone. They look cool, so let's go with the ones that look the.
And then the cameras really just added a whole other element to figure out how to make all this shit work together. But then two, like having on guests, like that's been kind of interesting too, as we've talked to people. Like some people want to be on video and some people don't. And some people are very shy, and then some people are like Paul.
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, it's been interesting. We went from one camera to now we have 3 cameras, and we've got stage lighting and the boom mics, and our first mics literally just sat on the desk, right, and we just spoke into them. So I mean, we've come a long way, but we're always looking for ways to.
It's just fun to keep investing as like people invest in us, by giving us likes and shares and follows and, talking to us and doing that. It makes us feel like what we're talking about's, not only interesting to us, because that's the driver behind all this, but interesting, to everyone watching and listening. So
yeah,
pushes us to do better, I guess.
Absolutely, and it's a grind, and that's why we really listen to our viewers and listeners. Is like give us suggestions, give us content material. Like, what would you like? What do you think we need to change or get better at or whatever? Right? It's because we want to succeed. We want to be.
How about this one? We didn't talk about this. Least favorite episode.
Oh, Phoenix Lights for sure. I dropped the fucking ball on that one. I'll be the first one to admit.
Phoenix, I think. I'm with you. Phoenix Lights was just like we had too much shit going on that week. We've been trying to do one episode a week, and some weeks, and even some months, like we'll have the episodes pretty well lined out of what we're going to get into. But that is, and I actually, while we're talking, I'm going to look up and see what the date was, because if I had to guess, I'm going to say this is probably primo golf weather, which means both Mike and I play in golf leagues, and you sub in at least one other league.
2. Yeah.
I sub in 1. Between all that shit going on and then the start of football season, like time just gets
But see, I don't want to
cramped.
Yeah, but I don't want to use that as an excuse. Man.
Oh, that's definitely an excuse, because neither you or I spent any time working on it.
Yeah, but I could have found the time, and that's what really pisses me off about it. Is it was half-assed, and you throw out whatever excuse you want, but I'll own it. So that's my least favorite. I would like us to go back and talk about it, because
there's actually a whole bunch of shit. So
yeah, absolutely.
So that was September 9th. Yeah,
it's primo golf, but again, and right around my birthday actually, so there was a lot of stuff going on.
Not to make excuses.
Yeah. But no, I'm owning it. I mean, I dropped the ball on that.
We could go back and do them, because there is a bunch of videos.
Yeah, absolutely.
There's a shit ton of content online about the Phoenix Lights, and it is kind of interesting.
And we picked up a few cameras, and we got some different things going on to where we can actually share videos now. I've figured out the technology side of editing videos and multiple cameras, and it's still a pain in the ass. And I'm sure there's somebody out there that can do a lot faster than me, but
I like having. I'm very outgoing. I'm probably introverted, but I'm very good at being an extrovert too. And I will say, I really like when we have guests on, because like when we first started this, there were like certain things that I just knew super well. Like Bob Lazar, I didn't have to research. I just knew it because it's so interesting to me. But after we kind of get through the stuff that you know a lot about, it's like, well, shit, now we actually have to like learn and research, and on top of a full-time job. So it's a big ask for me to keep this more fun. I still enjoy, and I would love to hear from our folks. Like, what do you guys like best? Like, I love bringing on guests, like people that know something that I don't really know anything about, because it energizes me. And that's why I'm sure people are listening and watching, because it's stuff either that they know about and they're passionate, or they have no idea about, and they want to listen to two dudes drinking beer in a garage.
Yeah.
Try to get to the bottom of it.
Yeah. I mean, that's a great way of saying that, because you're right. I mean, having guests on because being able to pick somebody's brain or mind that's been doing it for so long and that's been their passion, and when you feel their passion, right? Like they're so invested in that.
Yeah.
I mean, it to your point, it is energizing and it is fascinating, right? Like I have never once in my life said, you know what, I think I'm gonna sit down with a psychic. Never ever crossed my mind.
Yeah.
But here we are, and it was mind blowing, man. Like I mean, it's just he made it. I like to say he broke it down Barney style. So to all my Marine friends out there, they'll get that to where it's such a complex subject, but he broke it down to where a normal dum dum like me can understand it. You know what I mean? And it wasn't like it was demeaning in any way. It was just he was just so well spoken and he talked about everything so clearly. I think that's why I was able to latch onto that one so much.
Yeah. Yeah. It makes total sense for me. I like conversation. I like people that are passionate about what they are. And I feel like I'm a good listener. And so if what you're talking about is interesting, like let's sit down and have a conversation because it's just kind of fun, especially if I can drink beer.
Yeah. I mean, you just go back and talk like when we had Holly and Justin on, right?
Yeah.
You got
I knew nothing about any of that.
No, I hadn't. Yeah, I mean, well, I had the guy in Scarpacci when I was in boot camp that I mentioned who was Wiccan, but I really just thought he made that shit up because he just wanted to get a Sunday off. Like he didn't want to actually go to church. They just gave him like an ISO mat and he just went over in the corner somewhere. So I really thought he was just using that as an excuse to get away from drill instructors. I had no idea it was like legit, right? And then you have Holly on and she's talking about that, and then you got Justin with the mesoteric stuff, and it was just like shit I had never even heard. Like the mesoteric stuff, like never heard of it.
Yeah. It's so interesting though, as you kind of pull in astrology into it and talk about it through time. Like it's interesting how that can almost become a religion. I don't know, probably a loose definition, but like,
yeah, I mean, it's just fascinating stuff.
Yeah.
And I guess for me, like the folklore stuff is like up my alley because it's just like so out there, but it's almost believable. But it's like it's like you're asking yourself, was this just a story my parents made up when I was a kid just to frighten me, to prevent me from doing something? You know, and I think that's why I like those the best.
Yeah,
is because you just to all our listeners out there, give us some stories that your parents told you when you were growing up, and let's do some research.
I think it's a great segue, like to everyone listening and watching. We say it every episode, but like, let us know what you think is interesting, because good chance either we know about it and would like to talk about it, or we know nothing about it and we'll Google it and be like, oh, let's see if we can't find somebody to have on to talk about it, or if you yourself or somebody, like, let us know. Come on. Like, again, it's just about good conversation and getting back to the big three questions. If we can cover those in some form, fashion, or another, I feel like we're kind of upholding to the brand of Otherworldly Encounters.
Yeah. And, I know when we came up with the name and, we got our logo and it's got an alien and maybe we'll have to adjust that moving forward. Maybe we come up with a different design, but we cover so much different stuff, whether it's cryptic to UFOs to, folklore to whatever. And
but beers of the week.
Yeah, to beers of the week, but it's all encompassing because it's otherworldly. It's encounters, like whether it's an encounter with a spirit, whether it's an encounter through a spirit through, a psychic medium or whatever. Like there's just so much shit other than just aliens, UAPs, UFOs that fall under the name of this podcast, and that's why I think I love the most about it.
Yeah, I love it for a bunch of different reasons. I like hanging out. I like talking to people. I like drinking beer. But I also think like we're living in this age of technology and social media where stuff can come out in an instant. And it's almost like being on the news where like we can come on here and react. Like we've got a congressional hearing coming up for UAPs the second week of November that's maybe going to be presenting some interesting information. It's cool to have this platform to like one, understand what other people are out there that know that maybe we don't know, but then also to report back on the things that we've read and have heard about it. So it's kind of like building a community of friends, which I didn't really think that's what we were going to do, but that's kind of what's happened. That's kind of what makes it really cool.
Yeah. I mean, we were friends with, with the Bigfoot, with Doug Waller, right? If we wanted to go on a Bigfoot hunt or whatnot, and with his group, I'm sure we could, and maybe that would be a good live stream episode. But I mean, we just reached out about going to a Bigfoot, it's a state convention, right, or state whatever for Bigfoot. I would have never, ever would have been like, if you would have asked me that, like, I don't know, 7 months ago, before we had our beers, I'd be like, not happening, bro.
Yeah.
All right. Yep. But now I'm excited about the thought of going to this thing.
Yeah. It's just interesting to hear what people have to say.
It really is. I don't know. So I guess for me, if I'm going to recap myself from where I started to where I'm at now with, everything that we've discussed over 20 episodes, is when I first came in, and for those who've watched our episodes know that I don't like the word skeptic. Because again, I feel that they're very closed-minded, and you can provide them with a mountain of evidence and they will not change their mind. They're dead set that it's fake, right? So that's why I call myself a tweener, because I am open-minded. I believe with a good argument, compelling evidence, yeah, you can definitely change my mind on something. I'm a free thinker. So right now, that's where I'm at. I'm still a tweener. Now, I will say that we've talked about some pretty fascinating stuff that leans me more towards definitely plausible.
And this wasn't one that I wrote down, but you saying that just made me think about it. What out of any of the fields we've covered do you think has been the most compelling piece of evidence you've heard?
For not one
Any
particular subject? Oh, Gregory, 100%, hands down. And it wasn't so much what was discussed during the podcast, right? Like if those who want to go back and rewatch our follow-up video to that, it was what happened afterwards. That's where, for me, all the compelling stuff, because if you remember correctly, all the attention was really focused on you, because your mom had passed earlier in the year, and, and that's really why he thought he was coming. He didn't necessarily, I don't even know if he fully understood he was going to be on a podcast. I think he was just thought he was, Katie invited him, he was coming to have dinner, and he was just going to talk to you. He didn't really know me until his drive, that I was going to be here until his drive up. So there was just a lot of different things, right? So, but there wasn't really too much during the episode that was just really shocking to me, but it was after the fact when he just threw out a name, and I just instantly just started fucking bawling, right? Because like we discussed, very few people know what that name means to me. And, I can count them on 3 fingers. And for him to know that, and I mean, it was just, I don't know, man, it was just very impactful.
Yeah. I mean, there's no question that was an emotionally charged episode for me. And it's absolutely fascinating. I can't wait to talk to one of his acquaintances we're going to have on in a couple weeks, but still for me, going back to my roots and the whole reason I'm in here, Bob Lazar just continues to fascinate me because of the story never changing, the things he said coming true, and then just the wild things that surround him that you can't put your finger on, like the lack of education. He just is a polarizing person, and for me, being interested in that subject, like Bob's still just a polarizing piece of evidence.
Yeah, and when I guess the Bob Lazar thing, I think for me, when we talk about all these different subjects that we talked about, it always leads me back to Bob Lazar on his claims, right? Like the bone scanning, scanners, to the, UFOs when they want to just take off fast, they turn up on end and take off, and
Element 115,
and all these things that he claimed have seen back in the late 80s, early 90s are coming true. Now, it might not be every year, but and there could be a gap, but the shit's still coming true. And, and so whenever we talk about certain things, like even when we were talking about, Fravor and Graves and Grush, when you had the Tic Tac and it showed like that UAP go up on in and just get first thing, Bob Lazar. Right. So I get it. I mean, his story is fascinating and I agree with you. I believe majority of what he's saying is definitely true just because
I just
it's proved it. It's just, I agree with you with his educational background. It's just such an easy thing to just
I don't know.
throw on the fucking table and just give people the bird and walk away.
Right. But then like not working at Los Alamos, but then there's a phone directory that they find with his name in it, but there's a claim that he didn't work there. So it to me, it's like one of those things, like if you're going to do an elaborate government cover up, like Bob's story just feels like the kind of like template that you would follow to do it. Take a crazy guy who knows a lot about something, because again, if I'm a PhD published author, why do I want to work for this group when I can't ever talk about what I did or publish against it?
So I guess the other thing you think, I mean, how many times has he been raided?
It seems like a lot. I actually don't know. That'd be an interesting number to know.
So what if the reason he doesn't produce his educational background like diplomas is because maybe the government in one of the raids took them and he doesn't have them any longer, and then they were able to go through and erase his
from the college? I was going to say you could just request a copy of your transcripts,
right? But if they went through it at that time,
I feel like I don't know. We're theorizing. I feel like he just doesn't want to provide it. I feel like I should probably fact check that, but I feel like he said, I don't feel like I should have to provide it. And his attitude is, I don't care if you believe my story or not.
But where's conspiracy theories come from?
Well, that's just it. And Bob came forward in 1989 because he was worried about his life and he wanted his story to be out there.
Right. But I mean, we can sit here and theorize about his educational background, but that's where conspiracy theories come from, right? Is because it's a question that is not being answered, or people are deviating.
He's answered the question as to where he's went. The problem of the matter, and the other part of it too, is when, any interview you hear, the guy is not dumb. Like he has a wildly in-depth knowledge, and you don't build a particle accelerator in your house if you don't know what the fuck you're doing, and you're not a nerd, quite frankly. So like, obviously there's a lot there, and in order to get there, not saying that you have to go to college, but it makes a lot of sense. And Bob, had the claims of attending these different universities, and it's just like, what, to your point, and maybe the diplomas got confiscated. I don't know, but like, just produce the record.
No, I don't disagree with you there one bit.
I guess it doesn't help prove his story, though. It just takes away a piece of, something that you can discredit him with, I guess.
Well, it just throws another conspiracy theory into a jar of conspiracy theories.
Yeah, it's exhausting, but still so fascinating.
It is. I mean, we could sit here and debate it all night long. That's one thing I think is really cool about his story is just how many things you could try to debunk, right? Or you can sit there and question. But
consistently tell a story for 30 years.
Yeah, and not really deviate. Yeah.
Like, man.
Yeah, I mean, it's crazy stuff.
Yeah, so anyway, to the question, that's the answer. About Bob still, it's the reason that I got into it. I still remember, talking to my friend's dad and him telling me about Bob Lazar, and I was just like, I remember hearing it, not thinking a lot about it really at the time, but then as time went on and over each evening, I would like catch myself like thinking about it, like, wow, fuck, Element 115, like I don't even know what that is. Let me just look it up, and you like look it up and see when it was actually came out, and Bob's story is in '89. It's like, wow, that's just. And then then you start to progress down the rabbit hole, and part of what makes this so interesting too is when we have guests on, and I think the reason I really like it is like, so you get into a topic at a cursory level, right? And what's the thing that makes you jump down into the rabbit hole and start to, I want to take the red pill or blue pill, whatever the hell, and see what's at the bottom of the hole. Like, what pushes people to get down in there? Is it a personal interest? Is it, what drives you? And I think that's so interesting because it gets to the root of who you are, what your belief system is, and then how it fits into whatever the topic is. And just from an art form, basis of conversation, it just makes it super interesting to understand who a person is.
I think what takes us down, or anyone down, really a rabbit hole too, is just how inquisitive that individual is, right?
Right.
I mean, how many times have we gone out to a bar and we sat down to somebody and they just talking about random shit, and you're just like, cool, man, whatever. But if you actually sat down when they're, over some beers, or sat next to somebody random you've never met before, and just have like an engaging conversation and put your phone down, it's amazing how many rabbit holes you can go down.
Easy to forget how to do that anymore.
That's
the
true.
advent of social media and phone games and different things. But I think if you drop it all the way back to our original 3 questions, right? Like, where did we come from? What happens when we die, and are we alone? Like, just one of those 3 things. It's just such a fundamental question of being a human being. Like, it's hard to not ask yourself and answer it via religion or, astrology, or there's so many avenues you can go down. It's interesting to talk to people about how they kind of came to their consensus, whatever that may be.
Yeah. And I think if anything, like, obviously we have some technology on our desk and stuff like that, right? And we reference notes and all that. But I think with, when we have guests on, like, we don't really prep a lot for that. If you like, very little.
Oh, that's not true. We, for like Gregory, we had a lot, and Judd.
But yes, but we didn't really use any of it because we were so engaged. Like, to start out, we did.
No, we use a lot of that information.
See, I don't know, man. I think a lot of
like
it was
leading
just
questions too, and that's what helps drive the conversation on a lot of those things.
But most of the time, when we have our notes and we have stuff set up and we have a guest, we don't follow that shit. Like, we really, like, we will at some times to get back on topic. But if it's a really engaging conversation, it's really just free flowing.
Mike's saying this. I'm just going to tell you right now, in these notes, I have little check marks next to all of my questions because I follow that shit.
Yeah, well, that's him. This is me. I'm a free thinker here, and I just like to free flow. But honestly, though, there's been times when we've not even really gone off a script or gone off notes. It was just, like a freelance conversation between us and our guests. And I think that's what makes them so much fun is, you want to have bullet points and, to kind of keep on track. Cause you and I can definitely go down different rabbit holes, especially with this episode, we're kind of bouncing around on different things, but that's what we originally signed on for when we got onto this, was just talk about weird shit. And this is a normal conversation for us. But, I mean, there's obviously stuff that we do, we prep, but I'm just saying we don't always follow it. Mm-hmm. Put the phone down, chat, talk.
That's it. Live a little.
Yes. So to all our listeners, viewers, wherever you like to hang out, put your phones down. Right?
Unless you're listening to the podcast, keep it up.
Well, yeah, leave your phone on while you're listening to this. But I'm just saying, when you go out somewhere and hang out with friends or whatever, leave the fucking phone, put it down, engage in a conversation.
Ask them a question you normally wouldn't.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there's, like I say, Brian and I have had people on here that we've known for years and had no idea. So Adam, for example, right? Mm-hmm. Great friend of mine, known him for years, had absolutely zero idea that he was into UAP, UFOs, aliens, any of that. And the dude's very knowledgeable with all of it. So he obviously does his research, right? Yeah. No fucking idea. But
love it. You wouldn't have known unless you asked.
No, but that's the thing. Like, him and I have had numerous conversations, like in-depth conversations about crazy shit. This had never, ever come up until after our podcast. He's like, yeah, man, I'm into that. I'm like, what? Right?
Never know.
You never know. That's what I say. Ask weird questions.
Have a conversation. Hopefully it's with us. Like you said, let us know your stories. Let us know your ideas.
Yeah. Give us different ideas.
You've got different guests. Let us know who those are. We'd love to get in contact with people and have them on.
Yeah, because we had one viewer ask something about like how paintings and UFOs and, all that stuff.
How UFOs Diana Pasulka conversation.
Yeah, but it would follow some of her stuff. But that was just, one of our guests, one of our viewers throwing in, hey, have you ever thought about doing this? Great idea. Let's look into it. Right. So, that's what we just want a little bit more engagement from you all. And, what makes it fun. I still want like the listener tale type thing, like where people write in and share their experience, and we can read it, like just do a whole episode on just reading those.
Well, we've got a couple of them, but we've turned those into episodes. So
No, that's true.
we need more.
Yeah. And to Tyler, I still love you. We're still not talking about that stupid ass fucking show.
Yeah, no, that's not going to happen.
No, it's still dumb, and I'm not giving them any. I'm not even going to mention it because I don't want to give them any type of credibility.
There you go.
Or any type of airtime other than to say I think it's man. I just don't want to talk about that.
Yeah.
They're just so frustrating because this is what we talk about, right? When we talk about, just not to go down a different rabbit hole, but
I was just going to say.
this is going down a different rabbit hole. We might want to grab another beer. But when it comes to, you have those who are brave enough to come forward, share their story, right? And then you have those who make a mockery of the bullshit. And that's the stuff that pisses me off. And that show, and I'm sure everybody knows what fucking show I'm talking about. They have to at this point. It just like, I don't know, man. Just makes my skin crawl just thinking about.
I don't know. People love dumb shit. Did you ever see the movie Idiocracy?
No.
Oh, that's too bad. It's really funny. You should watch it. It's like kind of scary how so much of that's coming true. But one of the portions of the show in the future, there's just a show where people get kicked in the nuts and everyone watches it. It's like the highest rated show on television. So to your point of making a mockery, some people just like the chaos and the disaster.
Yeah, I get it. I get that point. I get that. Yeah, that's a good point. But God, man, like I just don't like since we all right. So 7 months ago, wouldn't have cared, but I just know like through our research and talking with different people how hard it is for someone who's had experience to come forward and then to have a group.
Listen, especially if you have a professional qualifications on the line, right? Like,
Forget
about just like social embarrassment, but if you're going to lose your job or your status, or if you're a military personnel, whatever that is, like there's a lot more to be lost than gained typically by coming forward. So I get it. That's why you don't have that many people doing it.
Yeah, I mean, because if you look at some of those who have come forward in the past, I mean, shit, their lives are ruined. Especially. What I've found in our research, and I could be completely off, but the closer you are to the truth, the harder the government goes in the paint.
Makes sense.
Bob
getting audited annually.
every third day.
Yeah.
Instead of the 1st and 15th or the 15th and 30th, it's every third day for that guy.
That's it.
So, all right. So, Brian, how you want to close this one out? What's your thoughts on the last 20 episodes, man? How you feeling about it?
Thank all of our listeners, all of our viewers, everyone for putting up with our shit over so long. We've done a lot of different things over a long time period, and it's just appreciate you guys hanging in there with us, and for the good, bad, and the in-between, and, for all the comments, good, bad, and indifferent. It's just engagement back and forth. It's what keeps it, exciting for me and keeps me motivated to keep going.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, we've made some great strides over the podcast. We've made some mistakes, but we own them. We don't try to hide it. And we have some great followers. We got Mike P. We got Charlie S. I mean, these guys have been with us from the get-go. I mean, Adam, Holly, Justin. I mean, they've been listening. They've been on the show. So, shout out to all them people. And then Gregory, helpmegregory.com. And he's linked us in with some amazing people that, we're hoping that we'll have on in the future. And I mean, I don't know, man. I'm excited for the next 20.
Yeah, I don't know what it's going to hold, but
I don't know either.
We're going to go there together. I know that.
Yeah, I do want to talk about Black Eyed Kids at one point. I've been researching the shit out of them.
Okay.
They're freaky. So, to all you out there, if you don't know what Black Eyed Kids folklore is or whatnot, check that out before we start talking about it. It's actually pretty scary, man. Pretty freaky. I'm looking forward to it.
All right. Well, again, thank you for the 6 months, the 20 episodes. It's been great. Give us a like, give us a follow. Let us know your comments, your feelings, your thoughts. We're here for them. Mike and I enjoy doing this, but meeting new friends is kind of the whole reason that we're here too. And most of those are unexpected. So I want to keep the surprises coming. It just keeps life interesting. So Until the next time, keep your mind open and your eyes on the sky. You never know what's going to fly by.
And with that, we'll catch you on the next one.